make a decision and move away out of the convenience, right? Because the way we're doing advertising, but even more like personalization of digital services, is going to change massively, and it's already changed. And trying to stick to the old ways is not going to help, because it also, like, anyone who tries to define the change is always going to be rolled over by the wave, right?
Hello and welcome back to Identity Architects, the InfoSum podcast that spotlights the pioneers in the media industry who are changing the way that data is used to power better customer experiences. I'm your host Ben Cicchetti, and for this episode our Chief Operating Officer Lauren Wetzel had the opportunity to speak with Christopher Reher, General Director Data at Axel Springer All Media. Lauren and Christopher had a fascinating discussion about the current state of the advertising industry, the deprecation of third-party cookies, and where the industry is going. Before we jump into that conversation, just a reminder to hit that subscribe button so you know when the latest episodes of Identity Architects land. But without any further delay, here's Lauren and Christopher.
Christopher, welcome to Identity Architects. We're so thrilled to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm very good. Hope you're good too.
Yeah, I am. I apologize if I sound a little bit under the weather. I am on the mend. But we've got lots to talk about. I know you very well. We've had the fortunate opportunity to work together a few times, and we're now at InfoSum and Axel, great partners, and I'm thrilled for that and all the things that we're going to do. But I also have some spies who have given me some really fun information and things. So I think my quick fire questions, more than any other time I've done this on Identity Architects, is going to be really fun for me. But before we even dive into the quick fire questions, can you just give all of our Identity Architects and InfoSum audience just a quick intro to Axel Springer All Media, to who you are, to what you do? Tell us a little bit about who is Christopher.
Oh, pleasure. I was just thinking if I have to be scared now, but starting with what we are doing is basically with media impact as the sales house of Axel Springer, and Axel Springer All Media being the holding for all advertising related companies we have. We are basically responsible for all the digital revenues coming in for the German assets of Axel Springer. And we're very much in contact also with our international assets. I think everyone knows, like Insider and Politico, also on your side of the pond, basically. So this is like really like the core business of advertising that goes through us, together with all the great units that we have in Axel Springer, working collectively. I myself am responsible for the topic of data within media impact, and also the holding of Axel Springer All Media, which means there is like infrastructure, productization, business development, sales, it's all the lobby parts, all the legal stuff. So obviously anything that makes fun right now and is something that will be needed for 24. And I'm very happy that we're working with you guys. Obviously, we've done great stuff together, great first mover stuff, awesome cases. I think there's been so much joy in this working relationship. Additionally, I'm heading the Department of Data Economy and the BVDW, which is a lobby organization in Germany, very much trying to form a digital ground together with the IAB, together with the colleagues in US. So there's always data on my mind, obviously. And I hope that this gives the listeners a little bit of what is and who is Christopher.
No, I love that. And I think I was thinking about this leading up to today and our discussion, how your division within Axel Springer, and then obviously what we do at InfoSum, we have a value called challenging the status quo. And it just sort of felt like the perfect thing that kind of encapsulates not just the partnership, but also I think what your division and you in your career have sort of been known for. So I don't know if you agree or disagree, but challenging the status quo, I think, is a pretty cool legacy.
No, I like that. I think also, like, it seems to be something that we have to do, right? We're working on a topic that is both in the legal terms and the business terms forming itself by the minute, right? There is nothing that is really established. And also when you look at it, I just had talks about this on the TV station and everything, where it goes around the question, what is going to happen digital? I think what we're doing here is the base work for connected cars, for smart home. Everything is based on algorithm. It's AI basically, but we did it in basically 2016, 2017 and for on. And now looking at also the work that InfoSum is doing and what we are doing together is something like making all this safe and making this sound in a world where the free market is a bit under attack. let's say it like that.
Yeah.
And we really try to challenge the status quo if it has to be like that, and really provide solutions for partners in the market that they can go on and they can work in the free and open market.
Yeah, well said. I'll get into it. Quick fire questions with Christopher. So, my favorite one that we always start with here on this podcast is, what is your earliest memory of advertising?
Ooh, my earliest memory of advertising is probably a sneaker that I had to buy myself when I was, I think, 12 or 13. And I was completely hooked on the advertising, and then I bought it in the wrong size. So obviously targeting would have been better if it would have been offered to me in the right size. But that was probably the first time I really fell for an advertising.
I love that. What was your first job in either advertising or marketing?
I have to differentiate that basically. Like my first job in media actually was when I was 16 and was working quelle surprise at Computer Build, which was also my first job in Axel Springer. And then the first actual job in advertising was when I was working for Border Forward, which was a publisher or a sales house in Germany when I was 21, I think, trying to finance my legal studies.
That's a really great segue into what I had learned about you, which I did not know before. But why did you decide to study law? And what do you think about ending up in media and advertising technology? Because I think maybe the past 5, 10 years, that sort of intersection and this notion of understanding data and technology and also having an understanding of law has needed to be like a critical intersection more than ever. But I think when you
Yeah.
probably first started out, you probably had different legal ambitions, I would assume.
Uh, Actually, I was just starting to study law because I wasn't good at math. So I just came out of the military, and I was like, all right, got to study something. Um, yeah, it was in the end, it was I'm fairly good in discussing and like to be right about things. So it was like fairly easy to go to the legal part.
It actually follows Professor Scott Galloway. I don't know if you at all follow him. He's an NYU professor and an
No,
economist, um, and he actually has something that he says around the time that the graduation statements come out and people say follow your passion, and he's like, stop telling people to follow their passion, follow what you're good at. So I think you
yeah,
that's kind of it. I'm not good at math. Legal is a path. I can
just
move
like
down
that.
that path. Yeah, I also think it comes down to confidence. Like where do you end up having the confidence so then you can not just master the craft, but then be a leader and influence others. And I think all of that's very connected.
And I think also it's like if like the way I studied legal profession was like understanding how business and society works. Because in the end, everything goes down. Like in the basis of it, it's always a legal process, right? Anything that has to be defined. But so it took quite ages. As you've been spying, you probably know that it took some time for me then, while doing the work in the advertising and in another job, to finally get to that point. But I think, and that's really answering your question. It was always a bet because I always liked the advertising sphere that I was in, and I always liked the digital aspect of life because I grew up with computers back home and like building them and everything. So it was always something I was looking for. And as soon as I realized that this data privacy stuff, this data law stuff is something that is not really digged out completely, it felt like a niche that would combine pretty nicely. So I also did my excellent thesis with the Data Protection Authority of Hamburg at the time when they were like cutting the last octet of the IP addresses, and they were really happy about it. And we just told them that, guys, thank you so much. So that's one more step of aggregating data. That's very nice that you did that for us. So all this in the end was like seeing something in the combination of legal aspects and data driven business that might cohese into something. And obviously that bet wasn't so bad.
Not at all. So how does this notion of your occupation as a bouncer come into play, and how did that help you be better at your job? Tell us more here.
That was basically one of the points. Like in the mornings, trying to study. I hope that good stuff that no one sees the video right now. But in the afternoons working in advertising, in the nights working as a bouncer. It was like anything to try to get that money for legal studies together. I think anyone who's studying right now knows that this is like you need time and money for that, sadly. But I think the bouncer business was something that really helped shape me in moments because you learn to work with people under extreme stress while they being under extreme stress and the situation is under extreme stress and trying to make those split second decisions on what you got to do. And you learn that you have to take a decision because not taking a decision is going to harm people. And that is something that really helped. I'd rather take a decision and be wrong about it and then like learn something from it and make a better decision than being stagnant about it. I think that's one thing. And also the aspect of understanding how people work and function was appealing in that.
I love that. Yeah, you have to build the muscle for not just everyone has instincts, but the listening to the instincts, the doing something about it, I think is not
Yeah.
something everyone that it doesn't come naturally to everyone. Knowing what you know now, what would you say to yourself when you started your career?
Mm. I actually would have to tell my past or my future me then. Actually, in that case, my past me, do everything the way you did
Yeah, it's all
because
going to be okay. You give
it's
yourself a pep
fine. You
talk.
know, it took some time, but everything's fine, right? Like in terms of what we're doing, as I said, like we are shaping something that's completely new. We're shaping a market. Um, we have the big luxury and opportunity, both of us and everyone who's listening right now, to work in one of those or branches that really provide something for the future and for employers that are really great. So that is a good thing. I'm a dad of a wonderful little daughter. I've got a wonderful wife, so I think it went well. Yeah, there's not much that should be different. I don't know if I would have been that happy as I'm now if I would just have studied within 4 years and everything would be done. So just stay the same, stay the course, be with yourself. I think that would be it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you also didn't just exclusively make it about your career because there's much more to the great work that you've done to date. But you kind of already answered this. I was going to ask you what you love about what you do right now in the industry you're in, but it sounds like from already a few things that you've said, it's all about the opportunity to transform, the opportunity to kind of push. But is there something else that you just love and kind of gets you out of bed in the morning?
I think really this learning every day you learn something new. Every day you have to challenge yourself. It's not getting boring, right? Even if you think that you've done it well, after half a year, you have to revisit it and you suddenly realize, oh, something legal has changed, or the technology has been moving like crazy, or the people that you're working with suddenly have great ideas or something. And I think that is like the big benefit also when I look at to my team. Like we've got so brilliant people working with us that constantly produce new ideas. And in the positions we are, those ideas actually do matter, right? There are a lot of jobs where you sometimes have the feeling that you like produce ideas without any effect. But what I really see here is that anything that we try is something that directly affects business and affects also future developments. And that is something that really intrigues me. Like creating new stuff, trying to push the boundaries, as you said before, but also making obviously something, contributing something to society that lasts. Because when you create something new and that stays, that's something that lasts, and that's a good thing. So there's a lot of stuff that we should and could cherish about our jobs.
Yeah, and I also totally agree that people and working with people who inspire you make it that much more, not just better, not just the end product better, but just makes it a lot more fun as well.
Definitely, it's the joy about it, right?
Yeah, of course. One of my favorite questions that we always quick fire is within advertising, we're obsessed with this concept of identity, the ability to identify individuals across devices and platforms. But how would you actually explain the term identity to your daughter?
To my daughter, it would be difficult because she's currently still learning the language. But I would say it's something that makes dad fly around the country all the time. But to be frank, I think the easiest way to explain identity is it's basically your life in a digital form that helps you to participate in that, right? The like I think that's the biggest thing that we have to try to transport to users, to people that are listening. The concept of identity is something that you can train. It's something that you can use to get the benefit to yourself. And that's something that's new. That hasn't been there before 2018, before GDPR and all the stuff that hit the market. And now people can steer what happens with the data. And that all that is combined with their digital identity. So I think it's a very beneficiary thing. And it's something that you can use for your benefit.
That's a great, it's always interesting because all of these answers are different, but I thought that was a great one. Well, I know what used to keep you awake at night, which was the bouncing job to fund the law studies, but what today keeps you awake at night, if anything?
I think my daughter. I think that's the answer is pretty easy. Because if she's not the one waking me up or kicking me or something, I think it's just like I'm trying to sleep like a stone. So in the end, it has to be my daughter.
What inspires you?
And what we do, I think it, what we do needs a lot of self-drive. So you have to challenge yourself. You have to enjoy creating new stuff. You have to enjoy challenge yourself, challenge everyone around you, be a bit annoying at times. Try to not be too much of an annoyance. But I think that the inspiration part comes in time on the one side from yourself. I think you can relate to that. And on the other hand, I think it's really this. There's so much stuff happening around what we're doing, and there's so much stuff happening around how society is developing and so on, that I think that the inspiring part of it is like really shaping society in a certain point of way, not in a positive or negative way, but giving people the tools to be digital. And I think that is inspiring because it involves basically every aspect. It's political, it's legal, it's societal, it's business, it's technology in the deepest form, and it's in the end it's participation. It's making possible that people can participate in digital life, and that's good stuff. That's inspiring, I think.
Yeah, I also think ever since knowing and working with you, you've never, I think sometimes in advertising, and it tends to skew also a little bit more to the US where we haven't had GDPR for 5+ years, you kind of get this sense of like, at any cost, like, the good advertising at any cost, the whatever it takes. And I think you're exactly what you just said in regards to, you know, the, the, the different components that all kind of need to work together in concert
Yep.
to sort of orchestrate that magic to make that transformation. You've never, it's always been included. It's always been all those parts. It's never just at the expense of, for revenue, but not for the consumer, not for protection of the data. And I think you just don't always have that. Like, I think the one thing in our industry is I think it's very important, not just the facets of the skill sets to sort of be able to translate across those different areas. Like, that's very important. That's what all of us are looking to hire and, to sort of bring into our organizations. But I also just think it's sort of that ethical piece. It's like the standards, it's the which then makes it, the memorable thing that does
Mhm.
transform and makes us feel good.
Yeah, and it's also our responsibility, right? If we are trying to shape something, we have to be responsible for that. Like you can't do stuff without accepting responsibility and accountability for that. So that's
Yeah.
important.
Final quick fire, and then we'll get into
All right.
some topic related questions about what you're working on these days.
Oh, let's see.
So one of my favorite ones, and actually when I was our first permanent hire in the US, actually. And the first thing I did when we started really hiring was every new person on our team, I would ask the same question, which was a little bit of an icebreaker. But if there was a song that was a soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
Well, that's a difficult thing because the job of bouncing obviously messed up my music taste. Um, there's no one song. Right now it would be Anne Kaffeekanne. I'm very sure that you don't know that because it just brings joy to the life of my daughter. But
You're going to have to send
I
me a
think
chat link to it so I don't forget, and I will listen to it right after.
I'm going to bring that to you, definitely. And it's again a recommendation for any young parents right now listening. Use that song. It's awesome. just going to help to make the little one's life better, and so it makes your life better. And yeah, I think like there's no specific song. I think what like I've been always drawn to metal music and new metal and also hip hop, and I like classical music. I like there's if something hooks me, there's normally it's a bass thing or something that really like I don't care who's the singer, it just like gets me into a flow. And I think if I say if you ask me if there's a specific song, I couldn't tell you. But if you ask me if there's a theme, there's something like anytime I get into a flow and I really feel engaged and I feel like this is something I can participate in, I'm hooked. And that drives me. It's always trying to like bring something out of it, like try to be beneficial to my surroundings in some kind of way. And that is a music in itself, I think. Can I try to dodge the question like that?
I love that. My one of my favorite things is depending also just what city you're in. But to your point on classical, I used to never like classical music until some days just appreciating being in New York. And I know you and I have talked about like we need to get you over to New York.
Oh,
The,
definitely.
the partnership requires it. um, I love listening to like Beethoven walking the
Yeah.
streets of New York because it's this very interesting soundtrack, and watching everyone commuting and watching everyone sort of in their own universe. It's one, given me an appreciation for music that I didn't have any interest in before, and two, it just like reminds me of like this is a really great place to be, really, inspiring place to be. All right, we're gonna dive into some deeper topics so we can kind of get into some of the great work that you're doing. But first, I think let's start a little bit more broadly. To Can you kind of give our listeners who might not be as familiar with the industry landscape in Germany an update on the status quo of the industry in general, but then also more specifically the publisher side in Germany and Central Europe, and even maybe more specifically because it wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't raise this, but how well prepared is the industry for a cookieless future? So just all of
So we have like 3 to 4 hours time now.
that. Well, I know you're prepared. So it's
So
more about
we,
like everyone else, tune in, take out your notepads. Like this is the chance.
I think the current state, let's be honest, is way better than it was a year or 2 years before.
Yeah,
But
amen.
if you look like for international listeners, I think we have the pain and the benefit that have been hit by GDPR in 2018. That there's always been a very lively discussion around data privacy issues in Germany, for example, because of the past that we have, where it's been used against the people. And so it was always a very strong discussion. And therefore, there's a kind of heritage around this discussing those parts. And if you look at the solutions that are coming out of the German space, like also driven by technology, but also driven by publishers, I think there's a lot of good stuff there. We do have also the issue that a lot of German market participants are really hesitant of moving new stuff. The classical German thing is like rather go with the market leader than than create stuff themselves. Or if it's getting like on an economy base, like getting big enough, then everyone is going to jump for that. So first mover things normally not ours. But right now in this topic, I think the German space is ahead of the rest of the world in terms of discussion level. Also in terms of what solutions do work and don't work, because we're really into like the nitty gritty right now with a certain group of people. So I think like in the top level, or not in the highest level or highest detail level, we're pretty good. But on the same side, what you can see in the German market still, the adoption of the new solutions is lagging behind. So it's people know what to do, but they rather not do the jump. And I think that kind of defines the current situation. If you would have asked me 1.5 years ago, I would have said like we're not ready, definitely not. And right now, I think we are at the cusp of just getting everyone really ready. And that's also why we're doing all the tests in the cases, and trying to like educate people around us and companies around it to show them it's not an issue to make this up. It's always better to build something up themselves or be independent about everything that changes right now than rather go to the platforms. Sorry to say that to the colleagues listening from the platforms. But I think that so that going from Germany, Europe to the US, I think Germany is pretty good at this stuff, but we have to make the move now. Otherwise, we'll drop basically. I think the European space does have the same challenges. That's a given. Um, but it's always a question of resources. If you're like in the Nordics, they've been doing brilliant stuff, but they do have also different market dynamics right now, also in terms of power. There is an ongoing power shift, I think, right now in the markets, especially in the European market, where you see where all the power once was at the agencies and the technology providers. It's more moving to the data holders, which are the publishers and the advertisers right now, which is also showing the discussions. And if I look at the US assets, I think like the stuff that we've been having to face in Europe right now is something that's going to help any business from Europe in the US pretty massively, because a lot of that stuff is going to hit the US market or is already hitting it. So I think there's a big chance for exchange between the different countries in terms of data clean room usage, in terms of how to structure identity solutions, how to cover all the legal aspects of it. Like, how do you get the consent? Do you really need a consent? How do you structure overarching contextual initiatives and so on? And I'm really looking forward to that, because what I see now is that this discussion is really ongoing now. Like 1.5 years ago, people weren't really talking to each other. Everyone was brewing their own stuff, and that was it. And now we see stuff getting together. On the other hand, I think we all see the effects of the movements of the big platforms, and I think we are all challenged to be creative around that, like to create value for our users. And I think we're on a good path there.
Yeah, specifically for Axel Springer All Media, how do you see yourselves positioned kind of relative to what you just described more broadly? And then just more specifically in terms of this new first party data era compared to others in the industry.
So you want to have like this classical, like all the number cheat now. No, I think uh, from what we've been doing, like we've been really starting like 3 years ago when we created the first legal groundwork, like combined JCAs for the home market in the BBDW, which was the first legal standard for the German speaking market, which has been adopted by all the, like, from Poland, Switzerland, Austria, everyone adopted those. I think that was a massive move, and what we've been doing also, like trying to be really at the forefront. Like the first identity case that was for multiple publishers, the first data cleanroom cases, decentralized cleanroom cases with you guys for multiple publishers, creating like the OVK contextual standard, which is like an overarching quality standard for contextual in the German market now. Pushing basically the idea that NetID is a good thing. I think all of that was something that we really wanted to be. Like, we wanted to be first movers. We wanted to make that jump, because obviously with our strategy of going digital first, we really have to see data as a basis of digital economy and as a basis of digital business at this point. And so that was the main goal, to basically move ahead and also make that jump, because we can. And we have brilliant teams here. I've got to say that once more, like the luxury that we have in terms of the people we're allowed to work with you guys, with the partners that we have, and also being independent as we are, like working with our own ad stack, working with our own data stack, not being dependent on any other partner, like in terms of like really being free of what we choose, is such a massive advantage right now. And it pays out, obviously. Like we are in deep conversations for all market participants. We do have like what, around 75 million profiles right now, which is basically covering Germany twice in terms of the
And you're
market
seeing
users.
performance, like
It's good stuff.
you're delivering performance in, especially even if you just look directly at cookieless to first party. And I think it's sort of the twofold. It's moving and proving that you can, meaning like we can do hard things, like we can sort of navigate this, solve it, adopt a piece of technology, launch a new critical piece of infrastructure, and sort of show that this can work. And then the second piece is, oh, and by the way, like it actually delivers and it's performant.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And the agencies are happy, bro. You know the results, right? Like they like CPA is getting better, conversion rates are
yeah.
getting better. Like, it's all because of the aspect that you're finally close to the user. And I think all this really shows us that first party data in the way also we structured it is a massive benefit for any partner, definitely. And also what we did is we built basically a system where we would do the heavy lifting, right? Because we
Yeah.
understood that if the rest of the market isn't ready to do the jump, we need to like make this easy to access for anyone and make sure that we do rebuild the connections. And I think that we're pretty good at that. And on the other hand, like, I mean, that was a massive effort, but it also pays off in the way that the market is working with each other now, right? Because obviously there's a very educated discussion about that stuff. Um, yeah, I'm positive about it. And I'm really happy with the results we have right now. So we're done with the first party data shift over now. And we're looking forward to anything that happens in 24, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think because to your point, the platforms are starting to move. I can actually recall when Google had shifted the date out the first, well, I guess it was the second time, like actually companies just changing their timelines. Like, well, we were
Mhm.
using these platforms, we deem these platforms are, are not going to work and we're going to shift to first party. But then, lo and behold, now my schedule's off and now it's getting pushed out. And I do see more urgency, more commitment, more, change. And that's even in the US. But I definitely would say the US more than other markets was just sort of slow. Like, oh, we have more time, we've got more time. But I think the more
And there
that,
was
not
no
that the,
need, right? Like
yeah,
you don't have like data protection authorities breathing down your neck at this
yeah,
point. So that, I mean, it's fair. Like in the end,
yeah,
it's the way the market's structured. But yeah, I think I'm with you there. Like there's stuff happening. It's good stuff. We still have to do a lot of stuff.
yeah. What are the
It's a
challenges?
given.
Like, what's sort of all of this was good. You've done great work. You work with brilliant people. I can, testify to that. And you have great partners like us. But what are still some of the challenges that, we need to work on together that the industry needs to just recognize and address?
I think like
We know it's not perfectly rosy.
no, it's not. No, definitely not. And you weren't asking about the question if everything's rosy, but if we're pretty proud of what we did, which we are. But I think like get over this last hesitancy. Like accept that
Yeah,
that the change is there. Like there's so many discussions still where people hope that it's going to be postponed once more,
I
and like
know.
the old business models are going to work out, and third party cookies going to stay, and any like I still see business models pitched that are completely based on third party cookies, and that's not going to work. And it's already not working because matching rates are below 40%, and Safari is blocking, and so on and so on. And I sometimes wonder how such a future focused branch like ours can always be so hesitant to move. But I think that's the one thing, like accept that the change is coming, and then really get into testing. Like really put also the budgets there and make a decision. I think like if you accept that stuff is coming, then you have to make a decision. And you remember what I said earlier, like rather take a like some kind of decision that is at least fact based and like redo it once you realize it didn't work out because at least you learned something from it. But make a decision and move away
Yeah.
out of the convenient way because the way we're doing advertising, but even more like personalization of digital services, is going to change massively, and it's already changed. And trying to stick to the old ways is not going to help because it also like anyone who tries to define the change is always going to be rolled over by the wave, right? It's like that. So I think that's the main aspect, and anything else is like working together. We can only win this thing if we work together. I think that's the one thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think in particular, one area on the working together, I think of like legal standards for data clean rooms
Yeah.
in contrast to just call it more broadly programmatic. Like, what do you think? Like, why hasn't a legal standard emerged? And I say this from the perspective of I find, you know, the way that like sometimes people just think of clean rooms as I'm going to replace exactly how I was doing something. So I used to send my data to my partner, or I sent my data to a third party and they sent their data to a third party and you did some stuff and that's how it went. And now clean rooms are just allowing you to replace that. And obviously there's so much more complexity in terms of the tech and the protection, and more importantly than anything, the easiest way I sort of simplified is just it's about control. You used to hand over control and now you don't. Now you keep control. And so with that, the sort of notion of how you're partnering and what's data sharing versus not, what's controller versus not. I mean, you're you're more the legal expert than me, and I'm genuinely curious because I know that can be a hurdle
Mhm.
that I want us especially to sort of lead the charge on.
Yeah. I think like if the question is why didn't we establish standards, I think because the whole thing is pretty new. Like
Yep.
in legal terms, if you have a legal construct that is younger than 3 years, it's basically non-existent, right? Because you don't have any verdicts on it, you don't have like any practical experience on it, and for that we're pretty far ahead, right? Like you sometimes you see the same concepts right now. I think the question of standardization is something that's coming up right now, where everyone is thinking, well, it's getting too difficult. There's too much legal stuff around actually using it and applying it. And so the interest is there to standardize. And that's always the start of standardization process. So I think both on a commercial or company base and also on a Verbandsebene, sorry, I'm missing the word right now, like BVDW, IAB, and so on,
Yep.
those guys. You see that the discussion level is going to standardizing that. But um, I think that also still has the issue that also the legal landscape in terms of what do you need to bring? What is actually what is the question that you're standardizing is still fractured. Again,
Yeah.
because of the fact that there's no real evidence in some cases. There's a lot of guesswork, to be honest. And how do you standardize something when no one is really sure what is something where you can put the weight on? But I think like in terms of maturity of discussion, we're going to go for standardization now. And I think there are already good concepts on how to make life easier using that technology. I think the data cleanroom itself, especially decentralized setups like the stuff that you are offering, do help in the legal stuff massively
Yeah.
because you don't lose control. You don't have to send away data. It's all in your own like property. And that is a very, very good move. Like compared to older models where you had everything centralized and had to send it there and like try to have someone neutral in the middle. And that makes the discussion easier. Anyhow, I think it's also a question of, and that's the third part, different legal views, obviously from advertiser or publisher or agency or technology level. And that's always driven because of there's a certain aspect those parties want to like push.
Yeah.
And I think if we want to have a basic concept, we all have to make a step back and remind ourselves that we need this technology to keep everything going. And we can have the battle about who's getting the better position afterwards, about the quality and like putting stuff on top of it. But I think that's one call to action for everyone listening. Like, don't think about the company at this point at first, but think about the way to make sure that everything runs, and then we can go to standardization. I think that is something that like that kind of small mind shift that is still missing is something that has to happen to get the standardization done. Like actually do instead of just demand. Like we remember discussions also in the advisory board where we also had this discrepancy, right?
Yeah. Having that representation, to your point, of publisher, of advertiser, of agency, and getting sort of the point of views from each of the legal teams and start to better represent and just better to it's standardization, it's education. And I
Yeah,
think you kind of you need to do it in certain instances and then show how that can kind of carry on and make it easier as everyone sort of scales within their own, private data network, so to call it.
it's true. And it's also, as you said, it's a question of information and knowledge. And to be honest, how many people are really in depth, like able to right now understand all that information? And it's a growing team because everyone educates the next one. That's a good thing. But again, also there, we all have to like realize that it's pretty new stuff, and it's fine if we do need some more time.
You mentioned earlier you're still seeing solutions with third party cookies involved, and that they're, whether it's like a vendor or something slide across your desk, that's sort of an option. Like, what do you think it'll take for us to not be on a podcast talking about this hopefully ever again?
In the end, it would just need Google to switch them off, right? I mean, I think that as long as people do think that it's not going to happen, that's also the time that those solutions will come up, because in the end there's still money in it, because it's convenience, right? Like also if you look
Hmm.
how advertising agencies do allocate the money, they still go through those means because it's a business as usual. And that's why I was saying, like, try to do the jump. Like business as usual is a strong force. As long as this kind of satisfies everyone in the role, that's something that is going to be existing. It's like still like the shift of power or usage in linear TV, for example. Like how long have been people like a lot of people have been preaching that it's going to shift, that people are not really watching linear TV anymore. But now we see it also in the market numbers, that there is not in terms of not being used anymore, but kind of shifting the view of the behavior. Um, and therefore, I think it's really a question of doing that and accepting that it's like that, and then moving forward from there.
Yeah, I agree. Putting on your global hat, what are some of the things that we, especially just in the US, still need to improve, and where can we learn from each other? It seems like, or even maybe said differently, if you had, for those who are simply waiting for Google to do something, call it. For those who are still believing, the old ways of working, which weren't sustainable, will somehow get the job done. Like, what would be some of your learnings, your advice? Like, where do those companies start?
I think, as I said before, it's first is acceptance, makes life easier.
It's a personal daily mantra. Like, this is happening. This is happening. This is happening.
It's like that. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's like that. No, but it's like acceptance helps you to move forward.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of companies do have solutions in house and do have brilliant people. Find these solutions. Find the brilliant people that you have that might have been buried on the IT desks or something, and make them combine the information that they've been pushing probably like 2 years.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing. Like, there's so much stuff already created. Use that. Like, the good thing for any company that's going to start to go this road now, will find a bunch of information. There's so much stuff already in the market discussed about it. W3C chats, GitHub, podcasts like these, the information from the pages and in the magazines at Week Day whatsoever. There's so much information already, and always participants of the market like you guys, like we, willing to share. So that's the second thing. Get the information. Anything that you don't find in yourselves, get the information. Discuss with the partners. Um, interact with each other. Don't sit idly somewhere in a dark room and then don't talk to anyone. Just pick up the phone. Something we're also recommending to our people always. I think that's the thing. And yeah, don't do business as usual. Use it as a chance. Get in contact with your users, because and that's also the thing that we learned here is like this dialogue with the users that has been prompted by all these legal needs and necessities, has been really good for us, because we finally understood what is really happening on the pages. And I
Hmm.
think what the US can learn from us in terms of like how to combine that data privacy difficulty level with actually continuing with it without like having to cut it all down, but just moving on and trying to make the best of it, despite the fact that we do have 18 different opinions from data protection agencies that continuously are bringing something new. And I think that is something, because obviously you will have that landscape too, where it's kind of fractured in the way data privacy is being employed. And what I really hope is that you don't lose your mind for innovativeness, because that is something that the US market is always bringing forth, right? Like really pushing new ideas, really pushing new technologies. And we kind of seem to be the sad guys that always like get these technologies and have to make it work with strong regulation. I think this is something where the both of us can benefit from. Like for us, like understanding that innovation is nothing bad, that we can do that ourselves, and for you guys to see that regulation is something that can actually create new opportunities, and then we can work together to figure out how all this works. And that's the chance, I think.
Yeah, not just waiting for regulation. I mean, you said it, you've learned more about your users and what they're doing on a page.
Yeah.
And, I always say every company should be a better guardian of their customer data anyways. So it's like the
Because you get also
principles
better results because people want
you
to
do.
have stuff, right? It's like that. And you want to be in direct contact with your user. You don't want to buy a third-party cookie segment somewhere through social media or something, but you want to be in the contact because that's what it's all about. In the end, the product gets better, the information gets better, everything gets better if you're in direct contact. And that's a good thing.
So what are some predictions as we wrap up? What does sort of 5 to 10 years out look like? Hopefully a land where everyone maintains control of their data and
That would
has
be
just
great.
as many performant case studies as we've seen.
No, I think in 5 years, obviously, everything will be completely different than it is now in terms of how we are using big data, how we are using connected cars, AI, how it's been forming society. On the other hand, I really hope that we've learned to to understand the value of it and to participate and steer this for our own benefit and make sure that it's not going to dismantle society, but it's really strengthening it. Again, that only works through knowledge, and I think that's something else. I really hope in 5 years that this is something that, like stuff we're discussing right now for a bubble of people that already know this stuff, that this would be something in universities and schools and so on. That would be brilliant because
Yeah.
otherwise digital society will fail in a certain way. But I think in terms of the advertising market, in a best case scenario, we do have a very educated and also balanced free market where we have those solutions. We have an interaction with the big platforms, probably different platforms than they are right now, but having a lively advertising ecosphere that is very much focused on the needs of the user, and by that producing perfect amounts of business for everyone involved, because that's the perfect cycle, right? Direct
Yep.
satisfaction of needs, like efficient use of data, like bringing that to who wants at the right time. But I think that's a 5 years window, and I think 10 years. Oh man, there's so many opportunities. Like probably flying cars and us living on the Mars and so on.
Totally different podcast, different industry, you and I. I'll see you then.
Obviously, both of us selling carpets or something because like the digital
Hmm.
stuff has already gone out of the window. No, I think really in terms of opportunity, like there's so much ahead of us. Like if you look at the way that AI in rapid ascension has been part of daily lives now, and kind of like also the discussion that has been created around it, despite the fact there's a lot of buzz around it that is not really leading to the point, and there's still massive flaws in the models. I think that's helping the overall discussion. So I really would hope for 10 years that like this, what I said for 5 years, the participation and like making stuff better is something that's really leading to a point we don't have any friction in the use of that stuff and also in the financing of free media and so on, because it really helps us to have good lives.
Yeah, I
Was that
agree.
too
I have
much, lottie lottie?
not too much lottie lottie at all. I have one final question, but before I just want to give you an
Yeah.
opportunity if there's something I didn't ask or something you wanted to say.
No, I think we're fine. I think that the topic we could discuss, as we said before, we could
Forever.
discuss this like in depth forever because there's so much interesting stuff around. But I think like a call to action is always a good thing to end on. Get your stuff together, people. Be happy. Be brave. Yeah, do the jump. Be willing to interact. Be willing to not do business as usual, but accept new stuff and be creative around that. And be responsible. Take accountability. Take responsibility for what you're doing, because stuff gets better with that.
I love that. I love ending on a call to action. I think that's a great sentiment. Recommendations for future identity architects. So, this podcast is about individuals like yourself who have pioneered new ways to use data to deliver better customer experiences. These are the people who do have that sense of responsibility, who do have that sense of challenging the status quo. So, when you look to people you admire in the industry, who would you nominate for us to go hunt after, like we did you, to pull on to an upcoming episode?
Hmm. Well, the two guys are already working for you guys. I think like Brian and Uli are always people that you can talk to about that stuff and how to
Yeah, I don't
change.
know if Brian or Uli will let me interview them, but I like that you said this because now it's out there. So
No, I think that those guys are like really brilliant. Also, what Uli did for the German market, what Brian has done for the overall market, like that's really challenging the status quo. That's being like at times bullheaded, just going through walls and making sure that stuff happens. I think that's one thing. Like in the
Right.
German sphere, we do have brilliant guys too, like really on the technical side. Way too many to name all of them, but I think like Robert Blank from our side, Adin Fierek, Abdelkader Baji, all those guys are really in the product time. I think who you really should talk to if you haven't is Achim Schlosser from the NetID.
Oh, that's a great, great
He's brilliant.
suggestion.
Like he's
Brilliant.
also very in depth in the US discussions. I think he's one of the few Germans that are really like so deep in the W3C discussions that the Google engineers actually are deeply listening to him. So that is someone. And I think like from a political standpoint, to make people understand how all this, like how identity and ID systems and all this advertising stuff actually like can work in a political sphere, because you have to do so much stuff around that and make sure that legislation is right and so on, is Thomas Duhr from Ad Alliance, who's really been
Yep.
in the market for ages in Germany. I think those are also insights in terms of how stuff is working. And yeah, again, there's so much more. Like you could go into sustainability, like those guys are doing interesting stuff. You could also go, if you want to talk about AI and how this is actually in a land like ours, something that you have to regulate or use and so on. You could talk to the guys of ARIC, which is Alois Kritel, who is the head of the ARIC. Brilliant guy. Really like he knows his AI stuff, not talking about it, not boasting, he just knows. And I think those are people that you should definitely talk to, because they work at the fabric of how all this stuff that we are making money off and everyone who's listening, like having their livelihood on, is actually being built and regulated and made possible.
That's great. My team is going to be thrilled because now we have a full roster lineup of requests for the next season of Identity Architects. Christopher, this was an amazing conversation. You're an amazing person. You're a responsible person. You're an intelligent person. You challenge the status quo. Thank you for being such a great partner. I know there's a huge bouncer flex happening right now for those who can't witness.
No, I'm getting red ears now because there's too much flattery here. Because every one of us is working together, right?
Yeah, your whole team is incredible. Thank you so much for being here. And I will fortunately see you across the pond very soon.
Really looking forward to that. Thank you so much for having me. It was just a blast.
Thanks again to Christopher for joining us on Identity Architects. It was great to learn more about his background, but also the incredible and pioneering work happening at Axel Springer All Media. All that leaves for me to do is to remind you to hit that subscribe button so you know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But until then, thanks for listening.